The latest casualty of the Eurozone crisis, Spain's government shown the door as voters make their frustrations clear at the ballot box. But can a new set of leaders rescue a country that's headed into another recession? And how is the financial crisis dictating the political future of countries across Europe? This is Inside Story. Hello there and a warm welcome to the programme. I'm Laura Kyle. Spain's José Luis Rodríguez Zapatero led a country from boom to bust. The crippling economy and record unemployment finally fatally threatened his Socialist Party's 7-year rule. Voters headed to the polls on Sunday in what was expected to bring a meteoric shift to the centre-right. Opinion polls put the Popular Party candidate Mariano Rajoy well ahead. He's vowed to make austerity cuts everywhere except for pensions, but has given little of the details away. European leaders will be watching the results closely to see whether this is the man who can lift the Eurozone's fifth largest economy back onto its feet. Well, it's certainly a tough challenge. Spain's economy is in dire straits, so much so that the whole election campaign has centred around this point. So let's look at the state of play. Unemployment is at a record high at more than 21%. It's twice above the Eurozone average, the highest in the industrialised world. Economic growth was stagnant at 0% in the last quarter of this year. The economy grew only 0.8% throughout the whole year. Public debt sits at a 14-year high, over 65% of the government spending, more than it was earning in taxes. But it's the private debt that's even more problematic. Banks' bad loans are at a 17-year high of $170 billion after a property market crash in 2008. So plenty of challenges facing Spain's new leader, and here to discuss them today are our guests in Madrid. We have Raul Ramirez Hidalgo, a businessman and managing director of Corte Fiel Group, the second largest clothing retailer in Spain. In London, Adam Myers, senior market strategist at Crédit Agricole, and in Brussels, Piotre Kachinski, research fellow at the Centre for European Policy Studies. Welcome to you all to Inside Story. Now, Raul Ramirez Hidalgo, if I can start with you. Rajoy is the clear front runner for the top job in Spain, but is he the right man for that job?
Good afternoon to everyone. Obviously, he's the right man, because now in Spain the only thing we need is a big and strong leader. We have spent 8 years. During these 8 years, Spain don't have any leadership in Europe. Nowadays, the only way to rescue this country, rescued by the Spanish people, not for the rest of Europe, is through a strong leadership. The name of the strong leadership nowadays in Spain is Mariano Rajoy.
How has he shown that in the election, in the campaign for this election? How has he shown that he's a strong leader?
Because in Spain we have clear two things. The first one, we have the highest unemployment rate of the euro, especially in the young people, as you know. But we need to someone to put in practice all the recommendations that the other party, Socialist Party, denied during 8 years. It's true, each country is different, but in this case we need to apply the recommendations of Europe according with the real situation in Spain. And the real situation in Spain, as you know, is not very good, especially for the unemployment rate, and obviously we don't have enough internal product to grow. That is the main reason to vote for Mariano Rajoy.
So he has said that he is going to address Spain's massive unemployment, but he hasn't said how.
First of all, we have to remodel our contract system. Now in Spain we have a different contract system than the rest of the Europe, and it's very expensive to the people contract to someone, because to leave the company for the Spanish company is very expensive. That's the main reason to syndicate union trade union, cross your hands with employees to resolve this problem. That's the main reason. The second part probably is our structure, financial structure in terms of bank. Our debt is very high, as you know, but we try to remodel of our financial banking, because in Spain, it's true, it's not the same situation as the rest of the euro, but we are very exposed to the real estate.
OK, let's move on to Adam Myers and get his opinion. Has Rajoy proven that he is the man that's going to pull Spain, if not back from the brink of recession, to a point where it doesn't need a bailout?
Well, I think it'll have nothing more than a positive expectational effect, just like we've seen in other sovereigns over the last couple of weeks. A new leader is obviously a welcome sign, but it does not change the underlying problem, and I think we'll see exactly the same thing happen in Spain in the next couple of weeks.
The same thing as what?
We'll see a further deterioration in bond yields. We'll see the unemployment consequences deteriorate further for Spain. Policy takes a long time to work, and just because a new government has been installed, it does not mean that the same problems that the previous government leaves behind can be very quickly rectified. And we've already seen that, as I said already, in other countries, and we'll see the same thing in Spain, in my opinion.
OK, Piotre Kachinski in Brussels. Can anything at this point rescue Spain?
Well, can anything rescue Spain is a good question, but Spain is not Italy or Greece. It faces completely different challenges than the other countries. So if you ask the question about rescue packages or renegotiating the debt, questions that appear in the Greek or Italian or Irish cases do not appear in Spain. Spain, as you have said before, Spain's public debt is only above 60%. It's lower than Germany's. It's lower than French or Britain. So it's not as big of a problem in Spain as in other countries. However, in Spain, unemployment is the biggest of challenges.
I wanted to pick up on that point of public debt, Raul Ramirez Hidalgo, because as Piotre Kachinski just said, it's not the public debt that's the problem, it's the banks, and you mentioned this earlier. But to recapitalise the banks in Spain is going to cost a huge amount of money. So where is that money going to come from?
Well, we have two ways to do that. Now, the first way is renegotiate all the credit international credit we have. The problem, as you say, and your colleagues from Brussels said, the problem is the interest rate we are paying for the debt. Nowadays is 7 and probably will be very close to 8 or 9 in the future month. It's true, Mariano Rajoy take measures not today, but yes, tomorrow, because we need a very strong government to apply all the requirements that the European Community requires us to offer money. The second part is the communities and nationalities part of the Spain. No? Taking account, Spain have decentralized all the government. And the government who work around the Spain, the states, expend a lot of money, more than they want to grow. That is the main reason we need to renegotiate all the credits inside and outside the country.
But where can Spain look for its growth? I mean, the construction industry has collapsed. It doesn't have a huge industrial base. You're a businessman. Where is it going to find its growth?
We can go because Spain is nowadays a country who export more than import. No? That is the main reason, because we are suffering to it. We don't have a very competitive nowadays. I'm sorry because I'm talking about nowadays, not to the future. That is the reason why this country needs to change in politics. Nowadays, are exporting more than importing. Our companies are not very competitive because the last government, Socialist Party, never put efforts on that. He thought that obviously the companies need to reserve all his force to apply for a new ID or something like this, but never understand. But to be competitive in Europe, have to be a very competitive inside. And that is the main reason that government of Mariano Rajoy pushed in this line, trying to force that national companies will be competitive outside the Spain.
Piotre Kachinski, if we can just look to how we actually got to this point, where did the Zapatero government go wrong?
Well, where did Zapatero government go wrong? Where everybody else went wrong as well. It's a series of consequences over the years. First, we all know that the real estate market in Spain has burst and was one of the biggest reasons why we have the current economic stagnation and unemployment at the level of over 20% nationwide and almost 50% in the category of people under 24 years old. So that was just the beginning. Then we had all across Europe, stimulus packages. And those stimulus packages, which were absolutely probably necessary 2 years ago, today bring us to the levels of deficits and public debt of Spain, for example, last year over 9%, or the public debt rising from 40s to 60s. Elsewhere, Greece or Italy even higher. So those sorts of developments took us where we are today. Was it possible to overcome it and do it differently? Probably Prime Minister Zapatero's biggest mistake was late response to the crisis. Spain was one of the last countries in the Eurozone to react to the austerity need in 2010, 2011. And we remember that if it's true that in Spain over the last 30 years, none of the governments has lost a vote in the parliament. Prime Minister Zapatero was the closest to lose a vote over austerity in the Spanish parliament, which made his government extremely weak, as in the Spanish circumstances. And last of all, we have those new social movements in Spain, indignados, which will be, for the months to come, a big challenge for the new Prime Minister, probably Mr. Rajoy.
Indeed, I want to pick up on the Spanish people's reaction in just a moment. First of all, Adam Myers, a late response was Zapatero's, or one of Zapatero's key failings. How much time do you think Rajoy has got to fix this before the markets start bearing down on him? Indeed, Brussels starts bearing down, Germany, France.
I'd say very early in the new year is that it's as much time as he has. People have to remember that next year Spain has 3 times the amount of debt becoming due that it did this year. That means the problem is 3 times as big next year, and without some form of handout from the European Union, those bills, those bond redemptions are not going to be paid. And so there is very little time for this new government, irrespective of the optimism that might follow them.
Mr. Hidalgo, he's got a few months. Can Rajoy enact the reforms that are necessary by the beginning of next year? We haven't even seen him announce any key positions in his new government if he wins.
Yes, we need to create a very strong government, but we don't have time to spend 1 month, 2 months, 3 months to apply the recommendation for the Europe. We need to apply tomorrow morning. And it's very important to know who is the guy who will be Minister of Economy, who will be the International Affairs Minister, because we need to get technicians government. That is the main reason, because the Spanish people vote for Mariano Rajoy or Partido Popular instead of to vote no alternative. If true, at the same time, nowadays we don't have more alternative than only one, PP, because if you have the opportunity to see the debate between both candidates, it's very clear at the beginning one of them will be the president, another one obviously is take care of the government. In this case, we need to apply measures, not today, tomorrow, I insist. I want very clear what is the profile of the Prime Minister, what is the profile of the rest of the team, and obviously we need technicians and the rest of the Europe, because the problem in Spain, there are many problems, and according with the rest of my colleagues, about the debt, about the growth in Spain, the economy, banks, unemployment, etc. But one thing is clear, we need technicians to apply the measure, very hard measure to apply comparing with the past, but necessary than applying the rest of the countries.
And you're confident, are you, that Rajoy feels that same sense of urgency that you and your colleagues are expressing?
The urgency is obviously it's very urgent, because I don't know how is the patience of Europe. Because we take into account, I heard my colleagues talking about the indignados. No? Indignados in Spain is the same like romantic movement, but we don't have very clear what is the measure for these guys. Why we have to take urgent measures? Because we need to apply all these measures as soon as possible, because in other case our prime probably going up month by month, and it's clear with this type of economy we can support this prime no more than 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, or depending of FMI, depending what is the patience of these guys. But in any case, we need to apply as soon as possible, because now we are on the ice on the rest of Europe. And nowadays I know how important is the result of this election period for the rest of Europe, because if Spaniards need to be rescued, probably the rest of the Europe going down, ongoing, especially French bank and Italy banks.
I want to move on to Europe in just a second. Just before I do, touch a little more on how Spaniards are feeling today. Are they excited to be voting in a change of government, or do they feel they have very little option at this stage?
No, I don't have this feeling in Spain, because the Spanish people now is clear. We need to vote with the heart and not with the head. Why do you say that? Because to be idealistic nowadays is to be not very clever, to be polite, no? Because we don't have an election. We have only option to vote, is Partido Popular, because it's the only program will be applied correctly, and we have the right measure in his hand to apply and to rescue this country, because in other case, is the only message that the government say to the rest of the population is wait 2 years more, please. That is all the socialist message in Spain.
OK, I want to broaden this discussion out a little wider to look at the Eurozone as a whole. Spain's Zapatero and his socialists are not the only likely casualties of the Eurozone debt crisis. It has indeed toppled 4 other European heads of state. And let's take a look at who they are. We've got Ireland's Prime Minister Brian Cowen, who was the first to go after earlier this year after receiving a $90 billion bailout. His party, which had dominated politics for some 80 years, lost out at elections to a Conservative-run coalition. Then in May, Portugal received a bailout of $116 billion, and that was followed a month later by the resignation of the Prime Minister, John Socrates. Portugal's centre-right party won elections. Greece has been granted 2 bailouts totalling $290 billion, but when Prime Minister George Papandreou called for a referendum on the second package, he was just 2 weeks ago ousted in favour of a technocrat. And it wasn't the sex or the corruption scandals that brought down Italy's Prime Minister Silvio Berlusconi. It was the country's huge debt and slow growth that forced him out just last week, also in favour of a technocrat. So it is indeed an extraordinary time for leaders of Europe. It's very unstable. Piotre Kachinski, who else do you think might be vulnerable?
Well, first of all, on this instability, if you look over the years, how many European governments change every year? 2011 is not really big of an exception. It's the same amount of leaders go this year as went a year ago or 2 years ago. So that's point number one. Point number two, there are also leaders who win elections in Europe this year and keep their offices, such as the Estonian leader or the Polish leader, Estonia being part of the Eurozone, and its economy contracted in 2009 over 10%. So the picture is not one-sided. If you do reforms well, it is a good chance, there is a good chance that the public follows you. And therefore, it's not a clear cut. You either do the reforms and you go, or you are a populist and you, to some extent, have to flirt with the public and then you can stay. Actually, no. If you are a credible leader and you talk to your people, to your society, convincingly, telling them what are the cuts that are necessary and then implement them, then majority of your population can follow. Well, now to your question, who can follow suit? Well, the next big question is, of course, the French elections in late spring next year and the position of President Sarkozy. Before that, what happens, it all depends. There probably will be snap elections in Slovakia early next year, probably February or March, and Prime Minister Radičová has already well, she lost the confidentiality vote in the parliament, so she will defend her position in a couple of months. So the situation is changing, though, from week to week. So if we've heard before today that next year Spain has big amounts of debt to pay back, I would say that's a lot of time. 3 or 4 months in current political situation in Europe is a lot of time.
I'm going to jump in there because...
So if Mr. Rajoy wins today, yeah.
OK, I just want to get an idea from Adam Myers, if you agree with that, if you agree that it is business as usual when we look at the politics of Europe, or do you get a sense that democracy is being lost out according to the demands of the markets? I mean, if you look at Italy and you look at Greece, those people today don't have politicians in power, they have technocrats.
Absolutely. And of course, because of the boom that we experienced over the last 10 or 15 years in many developed economies and the debt that was built up, the market has become all-powerful. It's actually been somewhat of a national loss of sovereignty, and that national loss of sovereignty has come because people have obviously spent beyond their means, from the retail level all the way up, of course, to what we're seeing now at the government level. So yes, the market is all-powerful, and that's why I believe that we will see even further reckoning with European bond markets, but developed bond markets globally over the next 3 to 6 months.
Raul Ramirez Hidalgo, does it concern you just how powerful the market is? If we look at Mariano Rajoy, he's failed in 2 bids already to be elected, and it's only in these bad economic times that he is pushed to the forefront because the alternatives aren't there.
Okay, nowadays we're in the worst thing that we never imagined in Spain. When it's stagflation, as you know, inflation wins recession. It's the worst thing that nobody imagined in Spain. A part of that, probably Mariano and the rest of the team, because I prefer to talk about the Partido Popular program, not only Mariano Rajoy, it's true, it's the leadership, but it's a global program for the Partido Popular. I understand all the opinion of my colleagues, and probably I agree with them, but I try to understand the real market in Spain. The real market is true, all the issues that you talk is totally correct, but we have very clear one thing. In the electoral process in Spain, we have 100 days, starting today till 3 months later, to apply all the measures. To apply all the measures needed in Spain to move the social of the people, because you need to remove and refurbishment all this economic structure in Spain. Public sector, private sector, tax, because our actual system is totally full, it's totally ridiculous, because the poor people pay more than the rich people. It's true, it's ridiculous, but it's true. And at the same time resolve the unemployment system. How can you resolve this problem, or this problem? It's not very difficult if you understand the opinion of the rest of the countries. We are totally agree with them. It's true, has a different point of situation, right? But at the same time, Spain is different. It's a famous sentence, but it's true. Spain is different, and it's not the first time we have in this position. Remember, 15 years ago with Felipe González, the last time that the Social Party governed in Spain, more or less were in the same situation as today, and we apply all the politics of Partido Popular with José María Aznar, with the fixing a small roof in the expenses from the comunidades autónomas, at the same time refurbishment, well, is the process to apply tax in Spain. Okay?
Yep.
And that's
okay, I'm going to jump in there just
the
because we are running out of time. I just want to finish on a rather broader point. It's a big question. Adam Myers, the future of the Eurozone. Can these countries that are failing, particularly the southern countries and Ireland, can they stay in the Eurozone as it is, or do we need to change the entire system?
The system will need to be changed. There's no question that the Eurozone as an entity, as a monetary, as a fiscal entity, will survive and will continue on. In fact, this crisis may well make the Eurozone much, much stronger. But there is going to be a very difficult training period ahead for us in terms of policy at the supranational level, that's the European level, and of course at the national constitutional level. That is going to take time, and that time the markets will not allow. So we are going to have something to support markets in the interim period, and that really now is going to be left, unfortunately, to the European Central Bank.
Certainly a lot of tough challenges ahead for Europe on a day of big changes for Spain. There we have to leave it. Thanks very much to all our guests in Madrid. We have Raul Ramirez Hidalgo, a businessman and managing director of the Corte Fiel Group, the second largest clothing retailer in Spain. In London, Adam Myers, Senior Market Strategist at Crédit Agricole. And in Brussels, Piotre Kachinski, Research Fellow at the Centre for European Policy Studies. And thank you, too, for joining us. Do send us any of your comments and suggestions to insidestory@aljazeera.net. Bye for now.